Hey, this is Scott Spears. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. Last week in the month of May, we're taping this. Hard to believe after Memorial Day, we still have a whole nother week in the month of May to go before June comes, and certainly the weather has not changed, and the most recent weather forecast, we're taping this on Wednesday night, looks like we're still going to be in the high 60-degree mark for about another week, unbelievably. I don't know if that means a warmer summer or a colder summer or what that means, but it's been a very interesting spring so far, to say the least. Lots to talk about. So glad to be joined this week for the episode by one of our favorite people, the 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow. Mary Ellen, we missed you last week. A big news week, but we're glad to have you back.
Yes, it's always good to be here.
Now, Mary Ellen, you were busy last week. You went and spoke to some students
Yes.
at the Women's Club. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. There was 80-some eighth graders there, and I talked about being in the Treasury, and they had a lot of questions about everything, but they had remembered I was at the football game last fall, and they had some questions about the job and about the Sacagawea, the coin. They were curious about that.
What are the questions the same now as when you were treasurer?
Pretty much, yeah.
Same type of things?
Pretty much, yeah.
Did the kids know at that age what a treasurer does?
Well, they seem to. I don't know for sure if they. I didn't tell them really that I was over the Bureau of, or I think maybe I did tell them I was over the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and the Mint, and you always wonder if they know what the Bureau of Engraving and Printing is, but I was talking about currency and coins, so they probably figured that out. Yeah, but it's a fascinating job to talk about. I mean, people like to hear about money.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Well, I'm constantly asked, working with money, about the penny. People are very interested. Have you heard anything new? What's going on with the penny?
Well, they're doing away with it.
They are going to do away with it.
Yeah, they're doing away with it, and I'm very curious as to how that's going to work out. And we'll just have to wait and see. When I was there, the penny cost less than what it was to make than what it was worth. But now it costs, I guess, about 3 cents to make. So I don't know whose idea it was to do away with it, but I haven't heard that. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Nobody has come out and said, they were against the penny. When I was there were organizations to save the penny and organizations to do away with the penny. And they were significant groups in Washington, really.
Well, it's interesting to me because I look, now, the most common form of payment that has went by the wayside seems to be the check. Not many people write checks anymore. There's still a few people, but not a whole lot. But a large majority of people still pay with cash. So it is going to be a big problem if the penny goes out of circulation in making change for people.
Yes, if something is $2.98, it's going to be $3.
Right, it'll have to change the prices, and I don't know how state tax will work because
I don't either.
That throws everything off.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that works out.
I always thought, I don't know how these conversations go down, but I always thought they kept the penny and they kept the denominations the way they were for change making because it's just going to be highly complicated.
Yes. Well, I mean, Congress told Treasury to find cheaper metals. That was their idea of a solution for it because, as I told you, the nickel costs almost a dime. And those are the two coins that are really questionable now. I mean, I don't think they'll do away with the nickel, but who knows? And if they found the other metals, I don't know. I mean, they could have, after I left, found different metals, but well, and the fact that Sacagawea is 77% copper, and I wondered, copper's expensive, and so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how all of this turns out.
Well, I remember during the pandemic when there was trouble getting pennies,
Yeah.
and a lot of businesses said, we are not going to give pennies, and I'll tell you, people got very angry.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that's going to work out if they do away with the penny.
One time we had a truckload of nickels that we couldn't locate. And it was they were supposed to be taking them to the casinos in Vegas, and nobody could locate the guy that was driving the semi, and finally we found out he was with his girlfriend all weekend, and everybody was relieved because he had a whole truckload of nickels.
So he just took off with them, and
he just took the weekend off. Yeah, right.
When you are dealing with money, how deep is the security?
Oh, you mean the security of making it?
Yeah.
Well, it was a constant struggle. The minute they produced something that had a mistake, it was worth a lot of money. So we had to watch that people weren't doing that on purpose, And then in the mint, they had cuffs on their pants back then. They could have two coins in their pants when they left and go through the what do you call it, the thing that
the scanner.
Yes,
yeah.
The scanner. Yeah. but the security was my constant thing that I worked on, and we had one instance where we suspected that this man was doing things with the money, so we took him away from where the money was, and they were remodeling the men's room at the time, and the people working remodeling the men's room said that they found behind the blocks of cement that he had money back there with a broom handle that had Scotch tape on it, and he was putting money behind there. And, I mean, it was, and then of course, he gets in a big bunch of trouble, gets fired, and maybe goes to prison. We had a few people go to prison, and
when you work with money, that can happen.
Yes, well, it's tempting. It's very tempting, but yeah, security was the biggest thing.
One thing I wanted to go through, because somebody asked me this the other day, and I thought this would be interesting. You were treasurer of Marion County, treasurer of the state of Ohio, and treasurer of the United States. But those, even though they have the same title, they're very different jobs.
Yes,
Yeah, what is, if you are treasurer of Marion County, what is your job?
Well, your job is to collect, protect, and invest the money. And it's the same at the state, only it's I said it was a bigger kitchen. And then when you're treasurer of the United States, I was manufacturing money. Now, it's not always the same job for every treasurer of the United States. It depends on the president and what they say your job is. And mine had been the same since Reagan. They didn't change it. But now, the last treasurer, who was a Native American for Biden, she did not have the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, but she had the mint. And then she was head of a committee that worked together with Native Americans and the government, and that was her job. But mine was the same as all the treasurers before me since Reagan.
It's interesting because we hear a lot today, in recent months, about the Secretary of the Treasury. And now that is not the same position as
No.
Treasurer of the United States. How do those differ?
Well, the Secretary of the Treasury is over all of Treasury. Treasury is a huge organization. It's got, I don't know, it was like 13 departments in it. And one of them is the IRS and the security, Homeland Security. Well, that was created after I was there, and Homeland Security took some of the departments from Treasury. It happened when one of the secretaries of the Treasury was in Europe. I said he came back from Europe, and half of his departments were gone. Yeah, I can't remember who the secretary was at the time, but it's fascinating. Of course, there hasn't been a treasurer appointed yet by Trump, but I'm anxious to see what kind of a job she'll have or he'll have there,
Now, the treasurers who've come after you, do you try to meet them or send them a note or have some kind of communication with them?
Well, I always tried to meet them, and they were, two of them were from California, and, three of them were from California. Obama's was, George Bush had two different treasurers. One didn't last very long. She decided to run for office in California against Boxer, and she lost in the primary. But then he appointed another person treasurer from California, and then Obama appointed a woman from California as treasurer who was a very interesting woman, Susie. She had an interesting name, and right now I can't say her last name. It was Susie somebody, and she had. Well, I went to see her sworn in, and she had four sisters, and they were all there.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought, well, that's great, And who's the man? It's the head of the Democratic Party in California. The guy that's the Democratic head, Brown?
Oh, yeah. Jerry Brown?
No, not Jerry.
Not Jerry.
No, it's a black man.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he spoke at her swearing in, and it was interesting to hear him talk. Yeah, and I had met him before, but yeah, it was nice to be able to meet the other treasurers. And then we did a podcast together. We did a podcast with all the former treasurers, and the one that was Trump's treasurer, she was from Chicago. She's a very nice person. She became head of the small business department then before she left. But yeah, we did this podcast, and so I kind of got acquainted with her. The others I knew. Yeah.
So, can people view this podcast somewhere?
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to tell you to get a hold of it, but it was through Treasury.
So it was all the living treasurers?
No, it wasn't all. It was, I think, 5 of us.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about?
We talked about what we did. A lot of them didn't do much. I did quite a bit with, redesigning the currency and Sacagawea and the state quarters program, and the gal that was under Obama tried to get a woman's picture on the money.
We remember this big kick up, yeah.
And it's still, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but she worked hard on that, and I've often wondered if it would. I think it kind of got shoved in the background a little bit. So
who they finally chose? Wasn't it? I always forget the Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Yeah,
Was it her? Was it her?
No, it was Hudson or the one that ran through the wilderness and got people to testify and everything. What was her?
Isn't that terrible? I've heard that 1,000 times.
I know. Was it Hudson?
Oh, I can't.
It seemed like it was HUD something.
Well, we'll Google that. Yeah. We'll Google that. We'll get that during the break because that's terrible. That bugged me if I can't remember her name.
I should remember that too, but I've forgotten.
But she didn't end up there.
Huh?
She never ended up there. It was supposed to be the $20 bill.
Well, and then later they said the 10.
Harriet Tubman.
That's it. Tubman. Yeah, I was close. Hudson.
It was close. It just popped in my head there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it still could happen if the right people, but probably not under Trump. I don't think so.
I thought it would have happened under Biden because it was an Obama thing, and it never did.
No, it didn't. And I wonder why. I don't know what happened there.
And also, I thought that was strange because for people who weren't maybe alive or paying attention, it was a big thing. I think 2015, they announced they were going to, I remember we did the story on the station. I think you were with us when we did that story, that they were going to put a woman on the $20 bill. This was a big deal. And they had a contest throughout the country where you could vote online. Eleanor Roosevelt was in there and Harriet Tubman. And I always found it so odd that Harriet Tubman got more votes than Eleanor Roosevelt. But I guess that's the way it went.
I voted for Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah. I thought she would have been the one.
But I can understand why. Tubman did a heck of a lot of dangerous things. I mean, it was so dangerous back then. Eleanor Roosevelt didn't do dangerous things, but she did a lot of difficult things for her husband. But she was such a groundbreaker as far as women, Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me because if you look at the presidents and on the money, and Ben Franklin, who was not a president, I don't think anybody really can identify, especially young people, anybody other than Washington and Lincoln.
Oh, that could be.
I really don't think they know who's on the 20.
But the reason they have who they have on the money was because people were coming into the country from other countries, and they wanted people on the money that they could recognize.
So Jackson was well-known.
Yeah.
Really? I thought.
Yeah.
I see that. And Ben Franklin.
Yeah. Well, he was really well-known. We lived over there and did a lot of work for the country over there. Yeah.
Who was your favorite person on the money?
Well, Roosevelt isn't on the money, but he's my favorite person.
Yeah.
He should be on the money. Of course, he was on the dime. And let's see. Let me think. I really liked Ben Franklin for what he did for our country. And, I liked Grant, too. He had a rough way to go. But he did a lot with the military, and Jackson had kind of things in his background that was questionable. But, they all were rather interesting people. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me because if you look from the first president, Washington, in the late 1700s, 1776, and you go through 1900, very few of those presidents are well known. I mean, Washington, the first star.
Yeah.
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, that group. And then Lincoln is in there, and Jackson is in there, and Grant. But really, outside of that, that's where you get like the Rutherford B. Hayeses and the
I know. I mean,
weird, obscure people. Buchanan, James Buchanan. But in the 1900s, a lot, maybe because of television and things like that, a lot of our presidents are recognizable. I know there's always been a movement to put Reagan on the money. Roosevelt, Franklin, and Teddy were very popular. Kennedy, obviously, is on the 50-cent piece.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever talked about the 50-cent piece. Is that a popular piece of money?
Yeah.
Is it because of Kennedy, do you think?
I think it is, yeah. Yeah, it's popular.
What did you make of Kennedy when you were growing up?
Well, I was I was grown when I met him. I mean, I was married.
And you met Kennedy.
I met him when he came to Mansfield. I met him he was out in a field giving a speech. There weren't very many people there. My mother and I went. She really liked Kennedy too. Yeah, we met him, and I really liked him. Yeah.
Why do you think, I mean, obviously he died very tragically.
Yeah.
But why do you think a guy who only had 3 years in office, did have some failures, the Bay of Pigs and things of that nature, certainly did use nepotism, put Bobby Kennedy in as his brother as Attorney General. Why do you think he's regarded so well for such a short period of time? What was it about him?
His personality.
He had a different...
He had a wonderful personality. I mean, and it's like Clinton. It's that personality that's so overwhelming. And then he had a very attractive wife that captured a lot of attention. And yeah, he just had an overwhelming personality.
You know, it was always interesting to me because I got fairly close with Helen Thomas later in her life, the dean of the White House Press Corps, and she covered every president from Kennedy to Obama. And I used to ask her who her favorite president was, and she always said Kennedy.
Did she?
She did. She said he gave people hope. He created the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
He was young. His family was young. He's the one who said they were going to put men on the moon.
Yeah.
He didn't live to see it, but they did.
Yeah.
And she used to tell, and it's a short story, but I thought we don't think of it now because we ended up putting men on the moon. But she said when he was president, he called this dinner. The press was there and a bunch of senators and Congress people. And he said by the end of the 1960s, we're going to put men on the moon. And she said everybody applauded.
Yeah.
And he left the room.
Yeah.
And she said all those congressmen and senators turned to each other and goes, is he nuts? How are we going to put a man on the moon? But it happened.
Yes. He was a forward-thinking person, right? And that's what I think that's what we liked about him.
You know, when I think about all the presidents, even how good Roosevelt was and how long he was there and the things he did, I don't think anybody had the feeling that Kennedy had.
Oh, Roosevelt had it.
You think he did?
Oh, he did.
Really?
You had to be alive.
During the Roosevelt time?
Yes. I mean, as far as I was concerned, I was growing up and he was president that whole time. And I just thought he was wonderful. The things how he managed the banks when he took over, and how he managed all the new programs and everything. I just thought he was terrific.
You know what's interesting to me is that Roosevelt, longest serving president, created so many of the programs that we have today. President during World War II, obviously our I think most remembered war, maybe aside from the Civil War, but he is never, I don't see Democratic candidates campaigning on Roosevelt.
Oh, it was too long ago.
Right. Well, but I mean, they still bring up Kennedy a lot, and they still...
Well, that's a lot later.
Right, but yeah.
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 I mean, you're talking a lot later than Roosevelt. Yeah.
But there, I guess, like during the Reagan era, I didn't hear the people who, a lot of Roosevelt people would have still been alive then.
Yeah.
That they really didn't talk about him. You didn't hear Jimmy Carter talking about Roosevelt.
He should have.
He should have. Well, maybe that would have helped. Maybe that would have helped in the end.
I would have talked about him.
Well, it's always weird to me that every president that came after him, Democratic, Truman, Kennedy, Johnson, Carter, that group that would have, a lot of the voting constituency would have remembered Roosevelt, they don't really talk about him a whole lot. As a matter of fact, Eleanor Roosevelt was not so high on Kennedy. She liked Adlai Stevenson, and I believe she campaigned for him until he dropped out, and then she met with Kennedy, and they kind of smoothed it over, but I don't think she liked him in the beginning.
Yeah, is that right?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. Well, you know what you heard and what I heard is probably two different things. Yeah.
Well, and I think during the time, you were alive when Eleanor Roosevelt was around, because she lived into the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, she lived, into fairly recent times. What was she seen like after
Well,
the First Lady?
she kept at it. I mean, after he died, she became even more active, I think.
Got a job at the UN.
Yeah. I mean, my gosh, that's big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her endorsement meant something.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and she had that place in New York where she lived. It was in a park.
Hyde Park.
I went to visit it. Yeah.
Were you a fan of Truman?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's see, who are we forgetting? Johnson. Lyndon Johnson.
Not so much. I didn't like it when he picked up his dog by the ears. And I guess, I just never, I liked her a lot. I mean, and I've been to his library I don't know how many times. It's a wonderful library. But he was kind of a different guy,
What was Lady Bird Johnson like? Now,
she was super nice.
She lived to be, I think she's the oldest living First Lady, lived to be 96.
Did she?
She did not die till the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And she was very active until she had a stroke at the very end of her life.
Yes, right. I met her at the museum, his museum, and it was well run, and I think she was very organized and very in charge. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of people saw her as kind of, they dismissed her in a way because she was the wildflower woman and she had the strange name Lady Bird. But a lot of people say she was very smart.
Oh, she was. Yeah, she. Well, I thought she managed things very well. So. I often wondered, what their life was like as a couple, because he was kind of difficult,
Now, Jimmy Carter, we talked a lot about him when he died earlier, or late last year, I guess it would have been, but where do you put him in the group?
Well, Jimmy Carter, I went to see his swearing in, about got crushed in the crowd. I said, when I come back, I'm going to get a better seat. Yeah. No, I thought Carter, he tried to do everything himself, I think was his problem. I think he was a tremendously smart man, but he was trying to do everything himself, and I think it was too much.
When you were in office, had the movement started, because he was not dead yet, so maybe it hadn't, to put Ronald Reagan on money? Because there's been a movement.
Oh, yeah, they were always trying to do that. They were trying to put everybody on everything. Yeah.
Well, what is it? I mean, until Trump, he was the person in the Republican Party, Ronald Reagan. You had to go get Nancy Reagan's endorsement. You had to say you like Ronald Reagan. What was it about him?
Well, he had that personality that everybody liked,
Okay.
I even liked him.
Yeah.
Didn't vote for him, but I liked him.
But you liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he won 49 states.
Yes, I know he did.
I mean, he was very strong.
Yes, he was. He wasn't at first. He had a rough start.
Yeah, the start was rough.
Yeah, but he made it.
Yeah,
and everybody liked him, and then, he was in office a little too long, I think.
And he didn't get near the criticism that Biden got.
No, not at all, but they should have, yeah.
For some of the same issues, I
Yeah,
think, that may have been going on there.
Right.
It's been a fun first hour. We're going to take a break here, and we're going to come back with current events. We're going to get to them because there's a lot to talk about with Mary Ellen Withrow right after this. Hey, Scott Spears for WGH Talk here with Matt Morgan, 40th President of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, and Dylan Davis, who has performed at Carnegie Hall the spring of 2024 and the Met at Lincoln Center. He is great. Tremendous. Marion is in the final four of the Strongest Towns competition. You have until Thursday at 1 p.m. to vote. StrongestTowns.com. Matt, Marion native, are you ready for this competition?
Oh, absolutely. I think we got it.
Mary Ellen, what do you think of Marion making it to the final four?
Well, I think it's tremendous.
Dylan, give them a reason to vote.
Close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams. Purge your thoughts of the life you knew before. Close your eyes, let your spirit start to soar. And listen to the music of the night.
Of course, music of the night from Phantom of the Opera. Mary Ellen, what do you think? You think we've got this thing all sewn up?
Oh, it's beautiful. That was beautiful.
Hey, Scott Spears back with 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow. Kind of reminiscing there, talking about presidents. So we don't leave anybody out. Let's pick up the people who we didn't mention, and then what your thoughts on them. Then we'll get into Biden here. Let's see. We got Roosevelt. We got Truman. Eisenhower.
Oh, he was, he was so military. He was okay. Yeah.
We got Kennedy. We got Johnson. Nixon.
No, let's not go into that.
That's kind of everybody's feeling.
But the guy was good after they put him out of office. He did so much good for the other presidents. I couldn't get over that.
I thought of you recently because there was a video on YouTube in what had to have been the early 90s, Clinton wanting to meet with Nixon.
Yeah.
And Nixon coming to the White House.
Yeah.
Right before he died.
It's hard to believe, but all the presidents called on him for help, and he helped them.
They all said that Nixon on foreign policy knew more than any of them, and that's why they all called him.
Really?
Yeah. But he was paranoid, I guess. He was a paranoid man. He had a weird...
But he did so many things that were bad. I mean, when he was in office, I just I can't understand. He was smart, but he didn't follow the rules.
I think, from everything I've read and seen about him, it seems to me, and I was alive, not during his presidency, but I was alive when he was alive, he just did not seem comfortable.
No.
And I think that was, if you're an uncomfortable person, and you get to that position, you're probably very paranoid that people are trying to knock you off.
That's a good word. And he was uncomfortable. That's right.
Yeah, he always looked.
Yes, he did.
He never looked like he couldn't. Ronald Reagan never took a bad picture. Nixon never took a good one.
Right.
Ford.
Well, he shouldn't have been there.
He kind of slid in.
He slid in.
The only unelected.
I never forgave him for forgiving Nixon. I never forgave him for that. Yes, he pardoned Nixon, which, that was his promise probably to get the job,
He always denied that.
I know he did, but I don't believe it.
You think there was a deal?
I think there was a deal.
It's so strange because apparently he and Carter, who ran against each other, had the deal that if whoever died first, the other would speak at their funeral. And Ford was a little bit older, well, quite a bit older than Carter, about 11 years. But Carter spoke at Ford's funeral, and Ford's son spoke at Carter's funeral. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Where else would that happen?
Right. It was something on the...
So he must have been a likable guy, Jerry Ford.
Yeah, I think he probably was likable. It was just that I sort of held a grudge against him for that.
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't get elected.
No.
Which he probably would have had that not happened.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, he as far as president, I don't think people had a whole lot of problem with his presidency.
Yeah. Well, he didn't... he didn't do much, did he?
Well, I think he kept Kissinger in there.
Well, Kissinger was good,
right.
Yeah.
And the Vietnam War, I think, finally wound down under him, which people were ready for.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
We did Reagan. Oh, Bush Sr.
Well, he was okay. He served in the military, and I have different feelings toward him than I do George.
W.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, W, I would say up until Trump, probably the most disliked president of the 20th century, maybe even more than Nixon, he would be in the running, was George W. Bush.
Mm-hmm.
What were those years like? You're just out of office, and here's George Bush.
I know it was terrible.
It was a rough 8 years for a lot of people.
Yes, it was really bad. And I was still in Washington, for 10 more years after I was out of office. And I didn't go near the White House. I mean, I don't think I even went and looked at it while he was there.
Obama.
Obama was good, yeah. Yeah, he did a lot of good.
And Biden.
And Biden did a lot of good, too, yeah.
And now
Yeah.
Trump.
Now we've got this.
Now we've got this.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Biden, I think it's good to cover this story. We haven't talked on air since this happened. A spokesperson for former President Biden announced last week that May 18th would have been the date that the former president has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer following a May 16th diagnosis. It's in his bones, stage 4, Gleason's score of 9. Now, apparently, it is... you can use hormones to treat this. It is receptive to that. But it's important to mention, for all men, prostate cancer is the second most common cancer in men, affecting 1 in 8 men in the United States, according to the American Cancer Society. Now, the sad part of this all is non-metastasized prostate cancer has a 97.95-year survival rate. That's good, but cancer that is spread to other parts of the body, which Biden's has a survival rate of about 37%, according to the Mayo Clinic. Mm-hmm. So, here this comes. What did you make of this when you heard this?
Yeah, well, I thought it was terrible. That I hate to hear anybody's got cancer. And he had given his whole life to government, and it's too bad that he can't have a time to relax and enjoy after all of his service.
I just thought, could anybody have had a worse year than Joe Biden?
Yeah.
He a year ago in June, almost a year ago, he has that horrible debate, becomes the first president ever removed once he's announced he's running, removed from that position. His mental acuity and his health are constantly questioned. The person he chooses to fulfill his term does not win. The person he likes the least, the person he beat, wins the election. Just as he's going back out to speak against Trump, he's diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. I think, my gosh, what a horrible year.
Yes, yeah. Really, I didn't really think it was the thing to do, though, for him to go out and speak against Trump, because it wouldn't do any good. I don't think. People, they don't always want to see somebody that's left office. It should be over,
The two questions that this brought up in the week after this was announced were, already stage 4, he's only been out of the White House 5 months. I mean, so much was made of his health in the last year.
Yeah.
Maybe this was there. I mean, I guess we'll never know, but...
No, we don't know that, and we probably shouldn't even think about it, really.
No,
yeah.
no, but I think the one thing that was a legitimate question was, I think this brings into question the age of the people we elect. Because had Biden been reelected and he was running again, 5 months into this term, he would have been diagnosed with this horrible illness.
Yeah, we shouldn't elect people. Well, look, the age of Trump. And, he's way up there, too. And you want people, just think about Jack Kennedy, how young he was and how vibrant he was. And that vibrancy is so needed in the presidency.
It is interesting. We talked about Kennedy being so likable because of his young ideas, young wife, young kids in the White House, young ideas. But yet, he is the youngest president we've ever elected, and we've never went in that direction again.
Well, who knows? We might.
It could.
We might
it could
later
happen.
on, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Clinton and Obama were in their 40s, but never got back into the 30s. Or,
Yeah.
how old was Kennedy? Early 40s when he got in?
I guess.
Yeah.
I,
So Clinton and Obama were similar, just a little older, I think.
yeah, Clinton was a little older, I think. I don't know exactly how old he was when he took office.
I think late 40s, just
Yeah.
maybe mid to late.
Yeah,
He and Obama were very similar in age when they
Yeah.
came into the job.
they were.
But I guess this big question that this brings, what is Biden's legacy? How does it, because obviously all this is going to factor in now to what would have been his presidency.
Well, he did the infrastructure that he wanted to do, and he really did a lot of important things while he was in office. I'm trying to remember some of the rest, and I thought he had a good presidency. He was working hard for the people, and he had good ideas.
Well, and the last bit on Biden here, but I don't know that we can blame the reporters for this because the book was already set to come out, but the Sunday, May 18th, is when Biden announced he had stage 4 prostate cancer. 2 days later, the book came out from Jake Tapper, Original Sin, which basically says, Jake Tapper, a CNN reporter, he wrote it with another reporter, says that there were two Bidens starting in 2019 and 2020, and that there was one who was fine and on the ball, but there was another one who would lose his train of thought, and he would forget people's names who were close to him, and this book is doing very well.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Now, is that a book you'd ever want to read?
I don't think so. Yeah,
I'm surprised at the attention that it's got.
I know.
It's gotten a lot of attention.
Yeah. There's been some books come out that I do want to read, and right now I can't think what they were, but yeah, there's some interesting thoughts, about people that are in government that write about it, and you're always anxious to hear what they have to say, but I don't think I want to read that one.
The one thing I can say about this cancer diagnosis of Biden is the moment that it happened, people who said such horrible stuff about Biden, including President Trump, all did release positive statements, which that's good.
Yeah.
That's hopefully how we all,
Yeah.
feel that he gets better and is able to live a happy life.
Yeah.
He's, hopefully does as good as he can.
Yeah.
Now we'll turn to President Trump here. Now, this is a wide brush. It's been going on a few days now, and by the time this airs on Friday, I don't know where we'll be. But all of a sudden, President Trump is being critical of Vladimir Putin for the first time.
I was glad to hear that.
And that's a lot of people say that
Yeah.
This is a long time coming.
It was about time.
Why do you? It's all over Ukraine. Putin attacked Ukraine rather savagely. It was a pretty heavy-duty attack the other day,
Yeah.
and Trump did not. Apparently, Trump didn't know anything about that because he did not like that. And it's the first time he criticized Putin heavily, and he did it again today. We're taping this Wednesday.
Oh.
Trump spoke out against him again. Why do you think finally, first 4 years, now all of a sudden he's speaking out against it?
Well, Putin isn't listening to Trump now, and that upsets him. He thinks he should be able to tell him what to do.
Do you think that... I never understood that relationship.
Well, there's something there that we don't know about.
Well, that's what makes this even more odd. Because
Yeah.
when he attacked him... Because I think the common wisdom was that Putin had something on Trump, and that's why he didn't attack him. Well, when he attacked him a few days ago, I thought, well, something's up.
Well, wait and see what happens, because is he going to keep attacking him and watch what happens in return? Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because it's all over Ukraine, and the last time Zelensky and Trump got together in the White House, that wasn't pleasant, but it does look like Trump is defending Ukraine in this position.
Well, he should be.
I mean, he seems to have come around on that for whatever reason.
Yeah, he should be.
Maybe he realizes the trouble. Maybe Marco Rubio finally got to him.
I don't know.
I don't know how I missed this, but I found out the other day that Marco Rubio was confirmed unanimously by Democrats and Republicans when he was put up
Yeah,
for
that's what they said.
Secretary of State.
Yeah.
So everybody liked him. I guess felt he could do the
Evidently.
job.
Yeah.
Maybe he finally got to Trump or something. I don't know. But it's a different attitude. We don't see much of Elon Musk anymore.
No, where has he gone? You know, he went up in he sent his rocket up in space. How did that work out?
You know, they criticized the people who went up, the celebrities. I noticed that Gayle King got a lot of bad publicity.
No, there was another.
the other one?
There was another takeoff. Didn't have people in it.
Oh, I haven't heard about that one.
Well, it was just about 2 days ago. I don't know what happened. I didn't hear the results, but I wondered about it.
Come to think of it, I'm not sure. Elon Musk didn't have anything to do with that one that the reporters went up in, or the celebrities, did he? Where was that SpaceX? I don't remember who sent that one up.
There was, well, they were talking about the one with the people that drowned in that.
That was Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos. That's who sent that one up.
Okay.
Another millionaire, another
Yeah.
billionaire.
Yeah, well, then they brought back up that deal with the submarine, the people that went down in that. That was in the news, it was yesterday, and they were talking about all of that, which really would have been horrible the way it sounds,
Horrible. I can't
Yeah.
imagine. Ugh.
Yeah,
Just a horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, I guess. Yeah.
Let's see. Well, Trump had another Oval Office meeting that was interesting last week. He was in an Oval Office meeting with the president of South Africa.
Oh, yes, I saw that.
That was entertaining.
Yes, it was.
For a lot of people. He tried to tell the president of South Africa that in his own country there was a white genocide going on.
Yeah.
And the president of South Africa tried to explain to Trump that this is my country and there actually more black people are being killed than white people. And then the part of that news conference that made me laugh the most, and I guess it's not something to laugh at when you're talking about genocide, but at one point I think the South African president was so flustered, he just turned to President Trump and said, "I wish I had a jet to give you."
Yeah.
And Trump said, "I wish you did too."
Yeah.
Did he understand that he was trying to joke with him? I couldn't figure that one out.
I think he didn't know what to say.
I think he was worn out.
He was,
Yeah, I think he didn't. But then after the meeting, he said, "Oh, we had a great meeting."
Oh, yeah.
What are you going to say?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, did you ever think? I mean, here you talk about. We just went through you've been here for Roosevelt and Truman and Kennedy. Did you ever think you'd watch an Oval Office press conference on television where the South African president is saying, "I'm sorry, I couldn't bring you a jet"?
And also the Ukraine president being treated the way he was.
And about his clothing.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I don't know where we are, but it's interesting to say the least.
Well, Trump ought to be polite to the people that come to see him, and he thinks he runs the world. He said that today, that he thinks he runs the world.
Where do you think this is all going to go?
I don't know.
We're only about 6 months into this thing.
I know, it's long. It's going to be a long 2 and 3 years, I'll tell you.
There's a ways to go.
It's going to be difficult.
Well, and this Memorial Day was Monday, and Trump went out as the president does and gives speeches on Memorial Day. And I'm not even going to try to quote him, but you can go watch the speeches. He does start to give a decent speech. But then he goes into parades, and he starts talking about his political enemies. I don't know what happens when he's out there.
Well, he's enthralled with this parade that's going to take place on his birthday.
Next month.
Yes.
Next month.
And
in Washington.
Just wait and see that. Yeah.
200, it's an anniversary for the military. They're trying to tie that all together.
Yeah, but it's his birthday.
But it's his birthday.
That's all you're going to hear is his birthday.
But you've been in D.C. a lot, Mary Ellen. What's this going to do to drive tanks down the middle of the
It's going
street?
to tear up the road or the streets. I mean, they weren't meant to be on streets.
Are people going to go to this parade?
I don't know.
I mean, because D.C. is typically a liberal voting area.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Unless people, I guess, maybe come from out of town. I don't know.
Yeah, Maryland's very Democratic, too.
I just was surprised that of all the places you'd want to do that, with all the traffic and all the infrastructure of Washington, D.C., why would you want to drive tanks down the streets of there?
It's his birthday.
Yeah, you would think they do it in Florida. Not that it would be right, but I mean, D.C. seems like the least likely place that you'd want to do that. That's like driving a tank down Manhattan, the street in Manhattan.
Well, he saw this in Russia and was impressed with it. And at that time, he wanted to do it here, and he's finally going to get to do it.
Let's go to the Democratic side here for a second. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who's getting a lot of attention recently, she was recently on a podcast, and she said that the Democrats should not try to run another woman, that they should not try to go out of the box, and this is her quote, not mine. She said they need to find the safest white boy they can find and run him.
Well, I'm really impressed with her. I like to hear her talk, and I think she's on the right track there. Let's not try to do another woman right away. Yeah, we're going to have to wait a little bit.
And Bill Clinton says the same thing.
Yeah.
He says, don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Don't think out of the box. And
Right.
I mean, okay, so I guess the question is, who is the safest white boy? We know there's a lot of people who want to run for president. Certainly Shapiro does. But I think his drawback is really, it's awful to say, but I think it's going to be being Jewish. I think that's going to come up. There definitely, we certainly have seen lately that there still is an anti-Semitic feeling in this country.
There is, yeah.
And I think that's going to be difficult, much like Kennedy's Catholicism was difficult back in the 60s. So I think that might be Shapiro's problem. I think a lot of people have turned on Gavin Newsom because of his stances on things, have become more conservative in California. You've said you were a fan of Newsom, but not so much anymore.
No, I turned toward Shapiro.
Shapiro?
But let's wait and see. We'll see people positioning themselves.
Well, I just wanted to bring up one name that we've never talked about who's become popular all of a sudden because of a speech given, I believe it was in New Hampshire, J.B. Pritzker, the governor, I believe, of Illinois. He's starting to get a lot of attention.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that.
He's just recently, and he was the richest politician prior to Trump and all the antics that are going on now.
Really?
Yeah. I believe he, double check that for me. Pritzker being I believe he's the governor of Illinois, governor of Illinois.
You know, the governors of Illinois have had a rough way to go if you go back through the years.
That's true.
A lot of them went to prison. Yeah.
A lot of people in Illinois went to, when we had, what was the famous mayor of Chicago?
Yeah.
Daley.
Yeah.
Daley.
Yeah.
And his son then
Yes.
became mayor.
Yeah.
And they had some interesting dealings.
Yeah,
Blagojevich went to prison.
I met Daley, met him in his
Is he governor? Yeah, there's Pritzker. Governor of California.
Yeah. I don't know much about him, but
or Illinois. California.
Illinois, I don't know. I'd be a little careful there.
What is it with Illinois?
Well, they've had a lot of problems.
I mean, Obama did come from Illinois.
Yes.
And Hillary was born in Illinois.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but they've had quite a few people go to prison.
It's true. And there's been some dead people vote in Illinois in the past in some elections.
Well, in Texas, too. There were some dead people voted in Texas.
That's one thing. You got to give Nixon credit for that. That when a lot of people started voting in Illinois when he ran against Kennedy, he didn't challenge it.
Well,
whatever happened there.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think that was, well, I don't know. I honestly, Kennedy's family, John F. Kennedy seemed to be in a little bit of a bubble. But his father had some interesting ties in life, and I don't think Franklin, and I think that's one of the reasons Eleanor didn't like him, was because father, what was his name? The Kennedy, Joe Kennedy. Joe was an ambassador under Franklin Roosevelt, and I don't think Franklin liked him. I think he was the German ambassador and sided with Hitler.
Yes, he was with the Germans. Yeah, well, did you ever read any of LBJ's books?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about stuff.
Well, yeah, LBJ, You know, LBJ is always confusing to me because people talk about Vietnam, and of course that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But even if you take that out, you gotta say he was good with policy. He knew how to twist arms.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Nobody knew how to twist arms like
He
him.
was really good at it, yeah.
But he also had these, you know, nobody's sure if he ever won a local election fairly down in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it interesting how these people, I mean, Johnson got the Voting Rights Act passed, he got the Civil Rights Act passed,
I know.
Head Start, all these I think more social programs passed under Johnson than any other president than Roosevelt. I think Roosevelt was the only. So he did a lot of good things.
Yes.
Yet he was also kind of criminally active down in Texas.
Yes. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
I mean,
when you think about it.
I don't. Who is the? And you don't even have to say the name if you don't want to. But what did you run into those kind of people when you were in office who were a little? What would you call suspect?
Well, you know, I talked to John Daly and some of those people. I mean, well, there was a union president in Cleveland that was very suspect.
Well, does that kind of go hand in hand?
But, well, he had, when I went to meet him, I can't give you his name, but I went to meet him. He said, "What's your husband going to do when the newspaper turns against you?" And I said, "Oh, he'll get mad and get over it." And that seemed to satisfy him. And then he endorsed me. Yeah.
So why was he asking you, why would they turn against you?
Why? Who would it?
The union president said, "What's your husband going to do when the newspapers turn against you?"
Yeah. Well, how's he going to handle it?
Right.
But that was not the union. That union supported me. It was another union that didn't support me that I had to go see, and I asked him how many women was in his union. He said 54%. And I said, "How are they going to feel when you don't support the only woman on the ticket?" And then he supported me. Yeah.
But you felt he was a little. Was that the guy who was a little suspect?
The guy in Cleveland was suspect.
Yeah.
Everybody knew it.
Now, when you met with Mayor Daley, who we all know now certainly was suspect, what kind of guy was he?
Very nice.
But he was a nice guy.
Very nice to me. Yeah.
Well, and he won.
Yeah.
He was in office when he died.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was in there.
He was. He could act nice. He could do things, I guess. You know, but that's life.
When you hear people say, and it's become a common term, that all politicians are crooks and corrupt, when people say that, what do you think?
It upsets me.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they're talking about. There's a few. Even when I was state treasurer, I had people that I thought were a little on the crooked side, but I'll tell you, all the women that I knew were straightforward and did things correctly, and I felt that people should be electing women because there was a lot of stuff going on with some of the men. Yeah.
Well, you had said, recently, I mean, it's no secret anymore, you were obviously, and still are, a big fan of Governor Celeste, but, we've come to find out that he had I don't know if it's suspect, but he certainly had some interesting things going on when he was governor.
Or are you thinking of the women? Or?
The women, yeah.
Well, that is different than, we've seen that in a lot of places, but it's when they're not running their office properly is what I'm talking about, where there's some crooked things going on with the money. You find out things when you're talking to people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. We've got one more segment with Mary Ellen. We're going to come back because the governor's race here in Ohio has a new ripple because one of the candidates has dropped by the wayside, and the Republican Party has decided to endorse a candidate already, oddly enough, and we'll tell you about that when we come back after this short but important break. Hey, Scott Spears here with Matt Morgan, 40th President of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, and Mike Larson, who's a great stand-up comic, has written for people like Ryan Reynolds, Drew Carey, Ellen DeGeneres, Bill Maher, all kinds of greats. Guess what? We've got the Cracker Jacks and the Peanuts out, so you know what's going to happen, but we're going to give you a little story first. Mary Ellen, you have a story about taking me out to the ball game when you went overseas.
Oh, yes. We sang that song in Shanghai for the Mint people there. They did, it was pretty much opera singing for us. And then they wanted us to sing, and we couldn't figure out anything we could sing unless it was Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Mike, you used to sell peanuts?
I worked at Candlestick Park at professional baseball games selling peanuts, yes.
Matt, here we go. We're going to give it to them. For all those people in Shanghai, here we go. It's Take Me Out to the Ball Game. 1, 2, 3. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, or it's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Number 1 record in Shanghai, I bet, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott Spears back with the 40th Treasurer of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, and we've got one segment left to go here, so we're going to turn to state politics because since last time we spoke to Mary Ellen, the gubernatorial race here in Ohio has some new ripples in it. Well, I guess there's a procession of things, so we'll kind of try to take it as it went. Word got out that the Republican Party was going to meet about 2 weeks ago, and there was possibly going to be an endorsement made a year and a half ahead of the election for governor, and that they were going to endorse Vivek Ramaswamy. Mike DeWine, I guess at that point, called Jim Tressel and said, let people know you possibly are going to run. That will stop them. Jim Tressel did do that. He released a statement the night before, Thursday night before, and said, I wasn't thinking about it, but now I am thinking about it. Well, the meeting happened Friday, and they went ahead and endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy anyway, and because of that, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost suspended his gubernatorial campaign in an email to his supporters. Yost said he enjoyed traveling around the state, engaging with Ohioans in his bid to succeed term-limited Governor Mike DeWine, but it was also apparent that a steep climb to the nomination for governor had become a vertical cliff. He said, I do not wish to divide my political party or my state with a battle over the small differences between my vision and that of my opponent. Yost wrote, seemingly to refer to fellow candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. He said, I am simply not that important. And Dave Yost, Attorney General, falls by the wayside. What do you make of the Republican Party doing this, Mary Ellen, and Dave Yost now out of the election?
Well, they're afraid of Trump. That's what it is. That's all I can say.
Do you think Tressel's going to get in this? I even saw an op-ed today in the Dispatch begging Jim Tressel to get in.
Really?
Yeah, to save the Republican Party.
That's interesting.
Because now it's just Ramaswamy and the lady who we met here on the program.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's very strange that this has happened.
I think so too. But all I can say is they're scared of Trump, or they wouldn't have done it.
Well, and Heather Hill, who was the lady on the program, I don't know what she's going to do. I mean, that's going to be an awful steep road for her. She says she's not getting out, but...
Oh, she said that?
Yeah.
Well, she was a very nice person and had a decent background, I guess, with the school board. But, an endorsement with... The only thing that can happen, and I've said this before, the popularity of Trump can go completely down, and nobody's going to want to do anything for him, and that could be the only thing that would save Ohio from Ramaswamy.
Well, what stuns me, if you are a Republican And let's say, I mean, we've got a year and a half to go.
Yeah.
Let's say that a scandal broke out with Vivek.
Yeah.
Now, you've already endorsed him. What are you going to do?
Right. I mean, they're in a bad situation, I would say.
And here, Mike DeWine, in this whole situation, a lot of people feel he's being mistreated for all he's given to the Ohio Republicans.
Yeah, yeah. Well, evidently, I don't know who's running the Republican Party. Do you know the top people?
I think his name is Triantaflu or something like that.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
But he was all in on Vivek.
Yeah.
Mike DeWine, when you look, here's a 78-year-old guy coming to the end of his career. How do you look back on Mike DeWine at this point?
Well, he served Ohio well. You know, I always felt he was involved in the situation where the money was passed out from the what was the name of that outfit?
First Energy.
Yeah, First Energy. I always felt that he had to have known about that, and I've often thought that he should have done something from his standpoint, but those Republicans stick together. I'll tell you.
What do you make at this point of Vivek Ramaswamy?
Oh, not much.
Now, if would you like to see Tressel get in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I really would.
Now, would Tressel be somebody who would appeal to Democrats?
Yes.
Because I think this is a different case.
I'm amazed at what people say. I think he'd have a good chance. Now, I know you said that 71% of the people are behind Ramaswamy, but that's only because he's been advertising for several months, and that's the only one anybody probably knows about or pays any attention to at this point. And what else has been on TV? Nobody else has been on TV.
Could you ever see yourself voting for a Tressel?
Yeah, I could vote for Tressel.
Really?
Sure.
What is it about him that could put you in that?
I like him.
You like him?
Yes. I don't see any activity from the Democratic side. They should be doing things, but they're not. That scares me.
If it got, because today, endorsements are interesting. And it's not so much that you would ever endorse the Republican. But if
I wouldn't endorse a Republican.
Right. But if it got down in the Republican primary, not the main election, if it got down to Tressel and Ramaswamy, would you ever do anything for Tressel?
I don't think so. I wouldn't get involved in it, you know.
That, to me, is an interesting race, because I don't know. It would seem to me that if it's only going to be Republicans, that Ramaswamy would probably have the upper hand because of the Trump support in Ohio. But if Tressel somehow could get some kind of Democratic support, then it's possible for him. Mm-hmm. Which I imagine, being an Ohio State fan, which would be a lot of the reason a lot of people would vote for him, is not a Republican-Democratic thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So I don't know. I think that would be fascinating to see where he would poll in those positions.
Well, you know, taking a poll at this point, it doesn't tell you much, because you can't go by that.
Now, you said you're not seeing much from the Democrats. So far, we've just got Amy Acton. What do you think's going on there?
I don't think there's anything going on, is there? I haven't heard anything. I have never met her. I don't know her, you know. I don't hear anything. What's happening? Tell me.
Well, that's why do you have any explanation just for your own self of why this is happening in a gubernatorial race?
No, I don't. I haven't. It's not the way to operate, I'll tell you.
You know, and we had this conversation back in December when the talk was that she was going to get in, is that she was a name that people know.
Yeah,
had that going.
Well, that was a couple of years ago.
Right.
People forget.
They do forget. I don't know. I have never seen a gubernatorial campaign run like this. I've never.
Boy, it's one in history, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
We wonder how it's going to end up.
well, it's fascinating to me because, you know, I covered Ed Fitzgerald, I covered people of that nature, and it's always bizarre to me that this has come the way it's come. Mm-hmm. So here we are.
It's totally different than you would expect it to be.
Well, it is, because I remember people critiquing Ed Fitzgerald's campaign and Nan Whaley's campaign.
Yes.
But at least they were out there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is completely different. But who knows?
Right.
I guess there's time. Would you like to see Tim Ryan get in?
I don't know.
He's the only other one I see.
Yeah, I thought he might get in, but he's not saying much, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll find out as time goes on with him.
Yeah.
Let's see here. There was some other stuff going on. Certainly, well, nationally, I thought this was an interesting story. That Marco Rubio has said that there is a division between the federal and judicial branch of government, and that no judge can tell him or President Obama how to conduct foreign policy. They're obviously not liking how the Supreme Court is ruling. Are you surprised with what the Supreme Court is doing?
Yeah, they're starting to stand up for things, which I'm glad to see, but nobody's paying any attention to them, are they?
Doesn't seem to be, and I'm not
No,
sure how the judiciary...
That's what I mean, you know, there's no effect to what they say. They tell judges that they support judges, and then nothing happens.
And, you know, so how does that... It used to be unthinkable that you would not do something with the Supreme Court.
I know, and really, I don't know how they cannot listen to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I really don't know that.
It's a different situation, but apparently they've found some way to work around this.
I don't know.
And the Congress and the Senate, what's your feeling on them?
So what, you know, we don't have the majority in the Congress, and that's the problem.
Do you think at some point, is this good for the Democratic Party? Do you think there is momentum gaining?
No. I hope somebody's working on this.
Yeah. Have you heard anything more? The Democratic Party here in Ohio doesn't have a chairperson yet.
I don't know anything about it.
No. It's
a mystery.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Well, what does the next Democratic chairman need to do?
Organize.
Yeah. When did you start to see things go in the opposite direction?
Well, probably about 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago.
Do you think we're going to see Sherrod Brown run for senator?
I think probably. I think he's thinking about it.
Do you think Eusted's a good candidate?
Well, I never did. I still don't.
Has he run for a whole lot of things?
I mean, he just kind of floated along as in his position under DeWine, and that's why I think DeWine appointed him to the Senate, because I don't think he thought he could win.
Yeah.
Really.
Well,
I mean,
there's a big article today on Politico, and it's all some speculation, but essentially the article says that the Trump people wanted Ramaswamy to be either appointed to that Senate seat or made lieutenant governor. And DeWine bucked this. He did not like the idea, so he appointed his lieutenant governor to be the senator, Eusted, and then he made a popular man, Jim Tressel, his lieutenant governor. So the Ramaswamy people, the Trump group, said, well, we'll just come after your job since you're not going to be there anymore. And that's why there's this seemingly disconnect in the Republican Party.
okay.
Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mike DeWine does not seem like a Trump guy.
No, he isn't.
Yeah.
He isn't. I don't think.
He seems to be in a different direction,
Yeah.
a different mold.
Yeah.
When you were in the state, politically, when you were treasurer of the state, who were the Republicans that you could work with?
Well, of course, I've told you Voinovich was governor when it was in my third term. We did not work together very well.
He was not good.
He would not, he didn't acknowledge me, yeah.
What was your first meeting like with him? Did you know right off the bat it was not going to be good?
No, I didn't right away. But but I soon found out, didn't take long to find out where I stood. He could have at least treated me decently, which he didn't. And, you just don't forget things like that.
When you say he didn't treat you well, what are the things you remember?
Well, when I would be on the stage, he wouldn't introduce me. He'd introduce everybody else, but not me. And that was, that was a state fair, and people would come up afterwards and say, "I didn't know you were up here. We've got a link deposit," and it was very noticeable what he was doing. He and his party, when he was elected, I didn't get invited. I thought I should have been invited to that, but I threw my own party then, and I had my own thing. But no, he was very difficult, and I think I've told you that I saw him on a plane after I was U.S. Treasurer, and I went up and shook hands with him, and he said, "And you are?" He didn't recognize me.
Oh, I don't remember you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, I was your treasurer, in case you don't remember." Yeah.
Well, and you were treasurer of the United States at that
I
point.
was treasurer of the United States, yes.
Do you think he knew who you were?
Of course he did.
So he was just being rude.
Well, yes.
Well, that's horrible.
Oh, it was horrible.
Well, at that point, with you being treasurer of the United States, and why was he being nasty then?
I don't know.
That's an interesting personality.
Yeah.
Did you? So I guess you never did have a chance to patch it up with him.
I didn't try to.
Right.
What was the point?
It doesn't sound like there was much with him.
No point there.
Holy moly! Yeah. Were you ever able to have a conversation with him when he was in office and you were in the state of why aren't you introducing me?
No. My staff kept sending my name up for him to introduce because he didn't do it, and they sent I don't know how many notes up to him, and I never, and then when he called me and told me who was replacing me, he said he's really a good person and he'll do a fine job. He did talk decent at that point, but the guy, I guess he was good to my staff. I found out later he was good to them, which I appreciated that, but he didn't know what he was doing,
And he was able to make that appointment because you had left during your term to pick the job.
And his name was Blackwell, and he called me and said he was going to be sworn in at 2 o'clock, or no, at 1 o'clock on the same day I was being sworn in at 2 o'clock. And I said, well, the state of Ohio is going to have 2 treasurers for an hour, so he changed his date.
Well, so this man obviously was not somebody that you got along with. Was there anybody who you didn't agree with politically, but you could work with?
Oh yeah, everybody. I didn't have any trouble getting along with people.
So he was really the only one that stuck out.
Really,
Just
yes.
Voinovich.
And it was all jealousy. Yeah.
Because you would run for you.
He thought I was after his job, and I could have been after his job. I don't know, but.
Did you ever look back on that now and think, why was he like that?
I don't have good thoughts about him.
I bet not.
No, I don't.
I bet not.
Nope.
As far as governors of Ohio, who obviously Celeste would stick out,
Yeah.
but who else sticks out to you as a good governor?
I'm trying to think.
Strickland?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Strickland.
Strickland. I was trying to think who.
Yeah.
I was drawing a blank there. Yes.
Rhodes was in there for quite a while.
Well, Rhodes was decent to me. He was a very nice person. Yeah, I'd see him at the state fairs and say hi to him. Yeah, Strickland, of course, was. I always liked him a lot.
You know, I'm glad I thought of this. We did, this has nothing to do with politics, except that you were in office at the time, treasurer of the state of Ohio, when Buster Douglas won the boxing world championship from Mike Tyson, Columbus, Ohio boy, and came back here. Were you a part of any of that when he had the big parade in Columbus or any of that?
I don't even remember it.
That was I think it was 90 that would have happened.
90?
90. But that was such a big deal. Here, this guy from Columbus, lived in Columbus, had beaten Mike Tyson for the boxing world championship. And I know they had a big parade for him in Columbus. I'm sure the governor was there. It probably would have been Voinovich in 90.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, that was a big moment that somebody asked to, because we were thinking about people who were big names in Ohio at that time, and certainly Buster Douglas for that period of time would have been a big name.
Yeah, no, I have no memory of that at all. Yeah.
Who were the people in Ohio, maybe non-political, that you met that stick out in your mind?
Well, there's a lot of people. Yeah, the different mayors and so forth. You're asking me things here that I've got to think about a while. We'll be off the air, but be off the air before I remember the names.
Kucinich.
Oh yeah, sure.
He was a big name at that time.
Yes, and we were good friends. Yeah.
And Marcy Kaptur.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's become a hot button recently again.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened there, but keep naming
Yeah.
them.
Metzenbaum.
Yes.
Metzenbaum.
Yeah.
Good guy.
And John
Glenn, of course.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Governor Rhodes. Now, go get Jack Gilligan, former governor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's how I got started.
He appointed you to the License Bureau.
That's right.
I do remember that.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I told his wife, I said, your husband got me started, and because he had passed away by then when I saw her in Columbus a few years ago. Yeah.
You know, I still don't think you ended up with the picture, but when Bill Clinton, President Clinton, was campaigning for Hillary in Delaware,
Yeah.
when you saw him,
Uh-huh.
what was that interaction like?
You know, he said he was so friendly, and I know Linda was supposed to take my picture, and she was standing there and forgot to take a picture. He said, "How are you really?" You know, like he really would. It was so nice.
Yeah.
And then he was walking out with Celeste, and I was walking out with him, and they were both talking to me about how I was and everything. It was very nice. Yeah.
Was that, I mean, I imagine that had to be a nice moment.
Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here you were.
Yeah. It was very nice.
You know what I think about is the day that Hillary came to Marion, the Harding Hotel, when she was
Yeah,
running,
yeah.
and you happened to be out of town.
Yeah, I was in Florida.
But
Yeah.
they did call you.
Yeah, they called me and they sent me a message on my phone, and I thought, well, shoot, and I don't know if I called my daughter and told her to go or what I did. I can't remember.
Did you ever end up seeing Hillary during that campaign?
Yeah, I did. I saw her. Let's see. It was in Columbus. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Where else did I see her? Well, yeah, I think I did. I'd have to think about that.
What was it like to see her again after all those years?
Oh, it was good to see her. She's always very friendly, and Yeah.
Did you have a different feeling? I mean, obviously, the election with Gore and Bush you were heavily involved in.
Yeah.
But all those other elections, Bush and Kerry and Obama and McCain. But here, Clinton, Trump, that was somebody who you had worked with. You know, she was first lady when you were treasurer. Was that a different feeling for you than all the other campaigns?
Well, yeah, you know, Norman gave a lot of money to that. And he wasn't one to give a lot of money, but he really liked Hillary. And yeah, I was surprised that he gave that much money.
You know, it's the...
Isn't that funny?
That's fine. So was that the most money he'd ever given
Oh,
to?
yeah, by far.
So to Hillary, he put it in there.
Yes.
So when we look back at that, we've talked so much about Hillary, but what is it about her that when she's running, it just does not go well?
No, it doesn't, but yet she had 3 million more votes than he did.
She did have 3 million more votes.
Yeah.
And she took it to 50 states with Obama in that primary.
Yeah.
So she'll be regarded very well in history.
Oh, yeah.
For everything she did.
She will be, yeah.
But
Yeah.
the campaign she ran, you can't say they were bad because she did do well.
Yeah.
But yet it
She
just
should have won.
it never turned
she
out
should-
for her.
No.
You know,
And that email situation was nothing, and Benghazi was nothing, and they just ran it in the ground, and you know, I mean, it was so ridiculous.
you know that's we're getting close to the anniversary of the 11th anniversary of this station, and one of the clips was during the 2016 election. It was getting close, and the big talk during that campaign was, why is Hillary so unlikable? Why is she so unlikable? And I remember you were coming on pretty regular at that time, which was always fun, especially during an election. And you came on, and I said, you know, this thing about Hillary being unlikable, I said, you knew her. Why do you think she's so unlikable? And you said, I don't know, and if anybody does, I'd like them to tell me.
Yeah, right. I've always felt that because they would say, I don't like her. I said, well, you don't even know her.
Yeah.
You know, why don't you like her? Yeah, that I would say that a lot to people. Yeah.
So, for once and for all, you knew her. What is she like?
She's very nice. She's a very nice person, and I think she was trying to hold back from the news in the beginning. I think that was her problem there. She was afraid of the news that was going to be created, and she wanted to try to control it. And instead, she turned people off, I think, a little bit on that.
Well, and I'll tell you, I can tell this story because we just talked about it. I didn't tell it at the time because a presidential election was going on. But that meeting at the Harding Hotel was it was the strangest thing I've ever seen any presidential candidate do.
Really?
Because she came in. Now, you cannot roll a presidential candidate into Marion, Ohio, and not have anybody notice on a Sunday morning. But she only met with about 30 people in the Harding Hotel. But of course, I was getting calls as soon as the motorcade came into Marion. So I go down there because it wasn't announced. It wasn't a rally. Nobody could figure out what in the world this was. I've never seen anything like it to this day.
Really?
I go down there. The Harding Hotel is surrounded by Secret Service and everybody. And I go up and I say, you know, I'm with the radio station. We want to cover this. And they say, oh, no. Nobody can come in and cover this. And I said, well, why is she here?
She was afraid of the news people. Yeah.
So, but I will say this. This is the rest of the story. So I left after she left. I did see her wave. She did wave as she came out of the place.
But she should have talked to you.
That was it ticked a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And I did go back that day. Now, I can say this. I emailed her campaign, because but you're always in contact with both campaigns. And I emailed her campaign and I said, listen, I do not appreciate... I understand she's busy, but to be kept out, you can't come into town like that and do that.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that was a Sunday morning. I got a phone call on that Sunday afternoon from her campaign probably within an hour, and apologizing.
Oh, did you?
Saying we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
We apologize,
Yeah,
and
right.
from now on, we will let you know. Now, she never came to Marion again, so it never became an issue.
Yeah.
But I was probably, her campaign was probably more closely in touch with me for the rest of that election.
Really?
And they got me Jesse Jackson, they got
did
me
they?
Al Franken, Madeleine Albright.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of that
yeah.
moment where they
Really?
felt they really had not. So there's a behind the scenes
Yeah,
story.
yeah, that is.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
But I think it all stemmed from
Yeah.
that meeting. And I still, did they think they could sneak in? I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
It was a bad, well, the newspaper wasn't even in. None of us were. We were
Yeah.
all outside.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure that out. But that's the way it goes, I guess. I'm trying to think of her name before we run out of time here. Rosie Reyes.
Oh, yeah, Rose, that's it.
She was out campaigning for Hillary, too, because
Yeah.
she had been a Bush appointee.
No,
No, she wasn't?
she was Barack Obama.
Oh, was she Obama's?
Yeah.
Well, that makes more sense then.
Rosie Reyes. I thought she had such a great name.
Yep.
Yeah, and she's the one that had the four sisters that were at the, that, you know, I couldn't think of
Oh,
it.
at the
for
swearing
Barack
in.
Obama, yeah.
Well, it's been an interesting episode. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we'll be back with more stories next time around. For the 40th President of the United States, Mary Ellen Withrow, Scott Spears, heading for the dugout.